So it is nice to know that apparently I appeared somewhere out of the universe, which is awesome. I just finished watching Star Trek Discovery, so I'm apparently sort of like a tardigrade. I'm sort of like a tardigrade that can use the mycelium network to appear anywhere, which is awesome. But anyways. What I found interesting at this event that the name of the keynote speaker was not announced. That was the first time in my experience. Actually, the start of your career is when organizers start publishing your name on the website of the conference, right? So I fear this is now the end of my career when they remove my name from the website. So later I can say, yeah, it was all downhill. It started in Leipzig. From that moment, everyone just stopped using my name. They didn't care. So, all right, let me put some stuff over here. I was in Stuttgart last week and in Zurich the week before, and next week I will be in Stuttgart again for some reason, and then in London. Talking about agility, business agility, my favorite topics. I'm sure that you are interested in that as well. And a couple of things always stand out. The same questions that people have. One is, how do we motivate our people and improve engagement? How many of you recognize this question? How do we motivate people in the organization? Do you recognize that question? Yep. All right, lots of people. Most hands go up. Okay, good. How many of you recognize this question? How do we scale agile principles and practices to large companies? Scaling, on whose minds is this? All right, again, majority of the hands go up. Another question is, how can we grow faster and change faster and be more agile at the same time? Productivity and innovation. We want it all. How many recognize that among the managers? Yeah. Yes. Again, most hands go up. So let's assume that we're not unique with our problems. Everyone has the same problems everywhere that I go. I find that fascinating. And what I notice that it is always said that there's not enough change. There's not enough change happening in organizations. Things are not moving as fast as we want, and this is sort of normal, apparently, sadly. And I think that's because there's lots of good people in bad systems. When I talk with people individually, everyone knows what they should be doing. And we know that we should be more agile or do Scrum things or Kanban stuff or whatever. I don't care. But oh my God, the organization and etc. etc. There's always excuses. There's always the system around us that is holding us back. So good people in bad systems. And I have tried to contribute. I'm sure some of you are familiar with my work, Management 3.0, book and workshops, and others have contributed there with their brands and workshops and books, etc. We're all trying to offer frameworks and conferences, but the problem is always the same. This may be difficult to read for you in the back, but it doesn't. It's the worst slide that I have, so don't worry. It gets better after this one. Because I stole this one. I didn't make it myself, so that's it's from the State of Agile report, and it says the number one problem in the world, company philosophy or culture, is at odds with agile values. That is what is reported most often. The organizational culture is not a good match with what we want from agile companies. And the number 4 problem, a general resistance to change. People just don't want to do these things that we offer them as good suggestions. People resist change. I hear it all the time. People resist change. And I find that interesting. Sometimes people say, no, people resist being changed. A small nuance, a little bit of a difference there. And that's interesting, because let's have a look at some things that have changed in the last couple of days or years. How many of you have resisted this change? Smartphones. How many of you are not using smartphones? Let me just see. 1, 2. All right. Okay, well, that was a successful change. How many of you have never played games before, whether it's board games, online games, Facebook games, whatever? How many of you said, no, I resist that change. I resist new games. A couple of hands, minority. Usually it's because we don't have time. We want to play them, but we don't have time. How many of you have never used streaming media? Spotify, iTunes, Netflix, whatever. How many of you refuse to make use of that change in the world? Let me see. One hand. Keep it up. Hold on. Yes. Don't give up. So people resist change. Are you kidding me? Lots of people adopt these changes. They're fun changes. They're good changes. So I think that everyone who says that people resist change is just incognizant. Sorry, not incompetent. English, difficult language, sorry. So incognizant, that means that we don't know, we don't understand how change happens in organizations. We need to learn more about that. So that's my first observation. I have a number of observations of the Agile community, and one is we all want agility at scale, yada, yada, yada. All the conferences are about that, but we don't know how change really happens. So let me give you some other examples. Changing the business, next subtopic. How many of you recognize this particular fragment?
Je peux me transformer comme je le veux. Regardez. Hup, hup, hup.
And then he says,
Barbatruc.
How many of you have seen this when they were young? Many, right. It was popular all over Europe, not Eastern Europe, I noticed. They've never seen this before, but in Western Europe and the Nordics, everyone knows Barbapapa. Apparently a French cartoon that I learned about recently that it's French, but I watched it as well back then. And Barbapapa was amazing. Barbapapa could change into any form. He could escape from a prison or from the zoo in this case, and then by squeezing through the fence. Wow, amazing! I was 5 years old. Okay, so forgive me. So here's another example. How many of you recognize this?
Hello, Quark.
Who was that? Anyway, many people recognize. Who was it? Deep Space Nine, yes. What was his name? Odo. Which species? Changeling, right. They were part of the Dominion, right, yes. The changelings, they were a nasty species, right? They wanted all the other species to look up to them and adore them, and otherwise they would blast their planets out of the galaxy, sort of a United States in space. But Odo was a nice one. Odo was a nice one. He was working at the space station. He was a security agent, and he could change into any form. Isn't that handy when you're a security agent? One time he was a vase of flowers, another time he was a dog, and he was always after Quark, because Quark was smuggling things all the time. Here's one that is probably more familiar to most of the audience. Remember that dude? Scary one. Okay, so this was? Which one? The T-1000, all right, from the Terminator 2 movie. He was scary. He was, at one moment, he could be a fist of steel punching through someone's face. That was a ghastly scene. And another moment, he could drip from a ceiling behind someone's back. Oh my God, it's scary. So it depended, the right form in the right place. And I think that is a nice metaphor for agility. Here's another one. She is Mystique from X-Men, right? So she gets paid $20 million for walking around naked. Isn't that amazing? I tried. I got nothing. But all of them are shapeshifters, I like that as a metaphor. Some people use different metaphors. I have heard ambidextrous organizations. Ambidextrous means right-handed and left-handed. You are productive and you are innovative, efficient and effective. But it's such a difficult term, ambidexterity. The people don't even know what that means. So I like shape-shifting. Have the right form in the right place. That is the ultimate form of agility, in my opinion. So sometimes you're hard as steel, and sometimes you're liquid, like water. Sometimes you're fast, sometimes you're slow. Sometimes you have to be organized, sometimes self-organized. It depends on context. So let me give you some examples. This is a picture of holacracy. Anyone familiar with holacracy? Anyone? Okay, good number of hands go up. Yeah, so it's pretty fashionable, trendy topic. Some really interesting ideas in there, such as the double linking between different circles, people choosing the circles that they want to belong to. That's all very fascinating. So I would say it is about 90% self-organized, 90% liquid holacracy. But there's still 10% solidity in there, because there is a constitution. 40 pages of stuff that defines what holacracy is. So that is basically the law, like the bylaws of an organization. That is rigid. So there's no 100% self-organization. Another example, the Spotify model, fascinating. I have it in quotes, like Spotify themselves always do, because all of Europe basically wants to implement the Spotify model, except Spotify. They don't do this, they say. They said, well, these are just ideas that we had, but things change all the time. So that's fascinating. But there are some good ideas in those documents that they have offered. It is quite inspirational. But again, it is not 100% self-organization. I asked Anders Iverson who is deciding who is the tribe lead here. And he said, oh, that's appointed by managers. Of course. That's hierarchical. That is command and control. The tribe lead is not self-organized in a democratic way by dot voting among the whole tribe or something like that. No, it is appointed there by management. And then SAFE. Oh my God. The scaled agile framework. It is even bigger now because this is 4.0 and it should be 4.5. I should replace the slide, but probably there's not enough room to put the new version there. But there are good ideas in there. I mean, they do basically the same as I do, just collect ideas from many sources. These make sense. They just offer it as a framework that looks rigid. So it is like half self-organized, half command and control, half free, half structured. And the problem I have with it is that it is a static picture. It is like Odo in the middle of a transformation, right? From being a dog to being a toilet, right? You can't play with it and you can't sit on it either. You can do nothing with it, basically. I want it to be dynamic. I want it to change all the time. That is my idea for the future. Framework should change every day. So in order to deal with changing goals, organizations have to be shapeshifters. That is sort of the flag at the horizon where I want to end up. Scaling the change. Another observation that I had. I'm sure you're familiar with this problem. Well, it's not particularly our problem. It's some problem. The British said, we want to take back our autonomy 1.5 years ago. I found that an interesting statement, taking back their autonomy. Did they ask any of you if it was okay? They didn't ask me. They just said, bye, we're out, goodbye. Well, if you can single-handedly decide to quit a relationship, then you never lost your autonomy, had you, right? You still had it. It was there all along for the taking. So that's a bit silly, taking back autonomy. They already had autonomy. And some people say, many people say, most economists agree that it is a bit of a silly decision because some things are better to agree on at a European level, at a pan-European level. Like, for example, I came here by airplane. It is useful for pilots to know that the laws are the same across all of Europe, right? That's handy. That you don't deal with different laws per flight tower in 7 different countries in 4 hours of flight, right? That is very annoying. So some things are useful to delegate to a bigger authority. It is more efficient when some things are centralized. Don't give that up. So I centralize some things. I give the decisions to others all the time, decision making. Like I have a PA assistant who books my flights and my travel accommodation, etc. Because he knows better than I know what to do. I have no idea why my hotels are always on the other side of the city. There's probably a good reason for that. He probably thinks that I need the walk through the city center or something. I don't question the decisions. I just trust that those are the best hotels. I delegate furniture in my house to my spouse. I have absolutely no idea what is the difference between Art Deco, Art Nouveau, Art Don't Know, right? It is all equally expensive. I can see that on the bank accounts. So I don't care, that's just fine. But there are some decisions that I do not delegate that I think are very, very important, that I take control of. Like, for example, I decide which streaming technologies we use in our house, right? So we have Sonos, we have Google Chromecast, we have Spotify Connect, we have everything. I think that's very important. Don't take away that part of my autonomy, all right? And so I do that all the time. I noticed I follow by these 4 principles, basically. I trust other people that sometimes they make the better decisions. They have more knowledge. It is better for them to do things in a central location, for others as well. I have no capacity to make all the decisions myself. There is such a thing as decision fatigue. People get tired of making decisions about everything. Self-organizing teams don't want to dot vote about the color of the walls and things like that. Let somebody else take care of those things. But I have the power to change any arrangement. At any moment I can tell my PA, all right, that was fine. That was the last hotel that you booked for me on the other side of the town. From now on, I will do everything myself. I can do that if I want. And I make sure that I can take back that control fast. And this is the problem for the British, right? Number 4. It's years of negotiation just getting out. Imagine them getting back in when they realize, oh, it's a bit lonely over here. That's not easy. I talked with a German company half a year ago who said, we signed contracts with our suppliers for 10 years. 10 years! You're stuck with the same supplier. I would never do that. I don't sign contracts at all. I can go to anyone else at any moment. That's what you want. That would be agility. So some people might recognize this as the 7 levels of delegation, where on this side I'd say there's a lot of command and control in companies. Too much, I agree. But then over here we have self-organization. Lots of things should be more self-organized, and there's quite a movement going on from that direction to that direction. That is good. But the question is, where should each decision be? On that side, on this side, somewhere in between. This is traditional. We agree on that. A lot of command and control. But is this agile? Question mark. Sometimes I feel that this is interpreted as being agile. When I'm at Scrum gatherings or Agile conferences or Barcamps or whatever, and I hear people talking about the ideal company, and then the ideal company would be a big crowd of hundreds of self-organizing, dot-voting hippies right now. That was the ideal company. No command and control whatsoever, no structure, just self-structuring all the time. I think this is agility. I think this is this back and forth switching, that at any moment, oops, that's a surprise, what's happening here? That at any moment we can decide for ourselves what to do. Strange things happening here. Connect, reconnect. Yep, this is still working. Boom, boom, boom. Takes a little bit of time. All right. Does he do it more often? No, we're only with Anna. That is agility, that back and forth switching. And you don't want to lose the benefits of control that you have in some cases while going in the self-organization directing, while achieving more freedom. I want both. I want the freedom, but sometimes I also want the control. So self-organization means self-balanced, not self-organized. It is not like we self-organize and dot vote all the time. As I sometimes say, when the ship is sinking, okay, we are not going to dot vote about who leaves first, right? We listen to the captain, and the captain gives instructions because that is what he's taught to do. Right? And then everyone leaves, and the captain goes last. Okay, keynote speakers go first. I know that's a rule I learned. So framing the change. Next interesting observation. 18 months pass between version 4 and version 4.5 of the Scaled Agile Framework. And 3 years passed between versions 2.13 and 2.16 of the Scrum Guide. New version was released last week, so this slide also, I will update it this weekend. So they increased the iteration cycle from 3 years to 1 year. Wow. It's a page of a document of 19 pages, I think. Takes them a year to update it. That's not very agile, I think. 2 years between the last two versions of Holacracy. So this is the iteration length of frameworks, basically. That doesn't look very agile to me. I think we should apply the whole principles of agile to the frameworks themselves. They should be updated every day. But how do we do that? That's tricky. Now here's a fragment of the Scrum Guide. Scrum's roles, artifacts, events, and rules are immutable. You can't change them. You can do parts of Scrum, but then the result is not Scrum. And I understand that Jeff and Ken have become a bit annoyed at some people, at some organizations saying, yeah, we're Scrumming. And then basically the only thing that they do is daily stand-up meetings while sitting on chairs or something like that. Right? Yeah, we're doing Scrum. And then they're like, oh my God, no, that's not Scrum, for God's sake. I mean, you're skipping everything. That's not Scrum. It's Scrum when you do everything as described in the Scrum Guide. I understand that. Like when you walk around the house, you don't say, I just did a marathon. No, you didn't. Right? You had to walk around the house. It could be start towards a marathon, right? Don't say you did a marathon. And then you don't understand what you're doing. But the problem is, if it is phrased like this, and that is the issue with many frameworks, you're only doing Scrum if you do all of it. You only do the Scaled Agile Framework if you implement this picture. That is how things are sold, and then people perceive it as push. Like the framework is pushed onto organizations. While Agile is all about pulling items from a backlog. Do things from an improvement backlog. Take things from an improvement backlog according to your capacity. That is what it should be. So I have a difficult relationship with frameworks. I love all the ideas in them, but the way they are presented is problematic. It is an issue. Great ideas in terrible packaging, in my opinion. So in my opinion, we need big picture framework. We need to turn them into small picture roadworks. Reduce the size of them. Everything should be under construction all the time in companies, but we have to figure out how to achieve that. Get rid of the rigidity, but keep all the good ideas. Now, why people change? Let's get back to that topic. Why do some people pick up new ideas? Fascinating problem. So I was in New York last year promoting my last book, Managing for Happiness. Anyone heard of it? Oh, very good. Just testing. So I was doing a book tour. It was released in June in the US. So I was there for 7 weeks. And at one point I was in New York City, minding my own business at Union Square, reading a book or something. And this was New York, so there were people from all over the planet, lots of different hairstyles and clothes and languages and body types. But everyone was playing this game. Pokemon. It was insane. Oh yes. People were walking around with their smartphones, talking with complete strangers. Which monsters do you have? And then things happened like a new monster appeared. A Snorlax appeared. Run, because it's gone in 10 minutes. And then everyone was like, oh my God, oh my God. And I was sitting there on the park and I said, what the hell is going on? This is insane. I felt totally ignored by this huge crowd that discovered something that I hadn't apparently not discovered yet. And at the same time, it struck me. I thought, I and other writers and speakers and coaches and consultants, we spend years convincing 1,000 people to change their behaviors in an organization, and it is so hard, so difficult. And then within 3 weeks, millions are playing Pokemon Go. It's just not fair. It's so unfair. I mean, why are not millions of people doing Manager 3.0 at the same speed of adoption? So I thought, I'm not getting something. I'm being offered a clue here about behavioral change that I should learn from. And traditional change programs are usually like this. We come with a guide full of rules, right? Often with PowerPoint presentations. And then we say, these are the new rules for your organization. Thou shalt honor thy product owner and scrum master. Thou shalt not kill thy customer. and on it goes. And that second one is particularly difficult for me, I can tell. So this is the way traditional change programs and frameworks are offered with clay tablets, or the modern version is PowerPoints, of course. But it comes down to the same thing. And that is a bit of an issue. It reminds me of this book. I've started running a number of years ago. My first run was in Stockholm, and I did it badly. Oh my God, I ran for 6-7 kilometers, much too far for a first run. And everything hurt. I discovered muscles in my body I didn't know existed, but they hurt. So I had to wait for a week and a half, recover, and then starting more slowly. And I decided to read, okay, so how am I supposed to start running? And I read a couple of books, and this was an interesting one. The running formula consisted of page after page after page after page of instructions. So in the third phase, on the second week, on Monday, you will run 12 kilometers, and on the Tuesday, you will have a rest, and on Wednesday, you will have a short run, but fast, of 6 kilometers. And I was flipping through that book, and oh my God, I got totally demotivated. It had no surprise to me that the author's name is Jack Daniels, because I needed a drink, I can tell you. I'm like, my God. I don't think anyone after this book is actually running. I think everyone just starts drinking after. So this is a bit how traditional change programs are offered. In the third phase, we will introduce this, etc., etc. That's how consultants sometimes like to sell everything, and that leads to some issues. I typed in Google, why do change programs fail? These are all the problems that have emerged over time. Lots of articles about it. So we need something else. And Jane McConaughey wrote a book, Reality is Broken, and it is all about why people play Pokemon Go and why they do not do the scaled Agile framework. Well, she does not write about that, but she writes about why people play games. All of the neurological and physiological systems that underlie happiness are activated by gameplay. Games make us happy. That's it. Games make us happy. That's why we play games, because we feel good playing games. That's interesting. So what is it exactly that people do in games? Let me give you an example. Here's a game. Some of you might recognize it. World of Warcraft. On average, bless you, on average people play 22 hours of World of Warcraft per week. And what do? Well, they walk around, they find things, they search things, they practice, they team up with other people, forming teams. Oh, let's start a project. Yay! And then a Scrum project starts. And we do an iteration and another iteration and another iteration. And oops, there goes the Scrum Master. Problem. And we do more iterations, we deliver stuff. And ultimately, we run to the customer, we show the results with a demo, and he says,
You're too late, old friend. No more, Garrosh. Just you and me.
But
I challenge you to Makora.
he gave you another project. I challenge you to Makara. All right, new project starts. And on it goes. So, yeah, that's what people do in games. It is called work. It's called work. Game developers know better than anyone else how to inspire extreme effort and reward hard work. You see that? Reward hard work. We do work and we get rewarded for it because it makes us happy. It makes us feel happy. That's the reward. That's awesome. So that is why people played Pokemon Go for a while, because the fad disappeared, the hype disappeared. But other games emerged because there's always new games. Applying these ideas to organizations is called gamification. Right? It is application of game design elements in non-game contexts. That's important. So gamification is different from serious games, which are also an awesome idea. But then you actually play a game with the idea of transferring what you learned to your real life, your real work life context. So you do something out of context and then you transfer what you learn. This is actually doing the game in your context itself. Your work, but you do add something to it that makes it feel more like a game. I have some examples of that. So I was I've been running for a while, and I have a rule for myself that I have to run 41 or 42 kilometers per week in total. That is the length of a marathon per week, and that's every week. So the longer I do, the more often I do it after each other, then the longer my streak, it is called. Extending my streak. Other people say don't break the chain. That's basically the same technique. It's an idea you can also apply with children. You give them a box of stickers, you give them a calendar, and you tell them you can put a sticker on your calendar every day when you brush your teeth, in the morning and in the evening. Oh, they love that. They love that. So they actually do work brushing their teeth, but they turn it into a game by putting stickers on a calendar, right? Seinfeld used this technique for writing jokes for his comedy series. He actually had a calendar, he ticked it off of his calendar. Did he write good jokes that day and make the streak, the chain, as long as possible? So something happened here. David broke the chain. Oh my God, what happened? I don't know, maybe David was sick or on vacation, but he broke the chain and he has to start all over again. Oops, not that long, 6 only, and then he broke it again. That's how you gamify things for yourself. But some people have a somewhat simple idea of gamification. I was at an event last year, I think it was in Serbia or something, where someone said, we have a gamification effort in our company. Sadly, there were Dutch people, I have to admit. It was a telco company, and they incentivized people in the stores to give each other feedback. And they had an app for that. So what they did was, if through the app people gave each other feedback, they earned points. So you gave feedback to him and said, well, I think you could smile a bit more. Yeah. All right. Okay, cool. Now you earned a point, right? Yay. All right. But then he gives feedback to her and says, maybe you could walk to the customer a little bit faster because you were a bit slower. Okay. So, ka-ching, then you get a point. And so everyone is giving each other feedback in return for points. So I sat in the audience, and when it was time for questions, I asked, okay, so why would I participate in that? What is my incentive? Well, to earn points. Yeah, but what can I do with the points? Well, you end up on the leaderboard and you try to be at the top. Oh, okay. What's the point of being at the top? We didn't get anywhere there. So I asked another question. Do the managers participate in this peer-to-peer feedback giving? No. No, they just look at the data of the points. And I was like, oh my God. I had a Jean-Luc Picard moment at that point. So this is, it does work for some people. This is another framework that I actually like very much. It is called Octalysis or Octalysis, I don't know how to pronounce it, by Yu-Kai Chu. He's a gamification expert. And this is exactly what a framework is supposed to be. It consists of many options, ideas. You're not supposed to do everything. You just pick and choose from this collection. But it is more than a toolbox because it gives structure to the ideas. And then the toolbox turns into a framework. And the ideas, at the top we find positive motivators, at the bottom we find negative motivators. On the left we find the rational thinking part, and on the right we find the emotional thinking part. So what I described here was this part of the diagram. Status points, achievement symbols, rewards, leaderboards, progress bars, it all is about accomplishments, trying to be the best. That motivates some people, sure enough. I like being at the top of a ranking every now and then, that motivates me. But it is only one part of what all of gamification is about. It is sadly a rather primitive, rather simplistic way of interpreting gamification. There's much more that you could be doing. Example. Some people have asked me, Jurgen, how do I solve this in my company? For example, someone asked me, how do I get people to use kudo cards? Thank you notes, basically. Get people to write thank you notes for each other. It works at 8 out of 10 companies, but some companies it just doesn't work. So I said, well, because she said, I gave them kudo cards, but then they're not using them, and the only kudo cards I received was the one I wrote for myself. So I said, I read something interesting in this book that I learned a lot from. One is about an example of someone who had a website where people could enter hobbies on a web form, and then you had unlimited space, so people typed writing, speaking, submit. All right. On average, 2 hobbies. And then he experimented and he thought, okay, what happens if I reduce the size and make just 3 text boxes available? And then it turned out that people used all 3 text boxes. Writing, speaking, traveling, submit. Ta-da! You just increased the response rate by 50% by making less available. Isn't that amazing? This is called the magnetic cap trick. You put an artificial cap on something, you say there is no more than this, you can put it anywhere, it doesn't matter. And then what you offer becomes more valuable because there's less available. Researchers have proven this with jars of cookies. If you have 2 cookie jars, one is nearly empty, the other is nearly full. Most people want the cookies in the nearly empty cookie jar because they're rare. They're the same cookies that it makes no sense. So people want those cookies because they must be better. Right? Of course, we take those cookies except the last one because that would be impolite. Except when you're Dutch, then you take the last one, I can tell you that. Because it is the only one, which is super interesting. But this is called magnetic cap. So I told that person, I would offer every person in the organization just 3 cards. That's it. No more. There's no unlimited supply. You keep them away behind, you lock them up, and you give them just 3 cards per week. This is all you get. Be careful with them. Don't lose them. You just increase the value of that user's piece of paper and you will see that people start using them, I would bet. Another example, someone said, Jurgen, we have this afternoon, Friday afternoon thing when we get together to chat and it's all important, but very few people show up on Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. It's always the Agile coaches who are there because they have nothing else to do. So, a bit of a problem, of course. So I said, okay, well, what I would try a silly selfie every Friday afternoon. with the people who are there, who actually show up for the Friday afternoon drink, I would take a selfie that is as silly as possible. And we print it and we put it on a coffee machine or in the kitchen, somewhere where everyone can see them with a Polaroid or whatever. And then you will see the pictures start piling up and people will be curious and they have suggestions. Oh, this is a ridiculous. So I have an even more ridiculous suggestion for the silly selfie for Friday afternoon. All right, but then you'll have to be there to take it, right? And you can claim the honor of having an even sillier selfie. And people will notice that some people are never on the silly selfies. Ooh, peer pressure starts building up. They will make sure that they can be seen on some of the pictures. So what part of the model is that? Well, of course, social influence is all about social influence, prodding each other, etc. Another part of the diagram. I have an example from my young youth, a long time ago, I fear. When I was 10 years old, I participated in the 4-day swimming challenge in our town. That was 4 days, the kids of various schools were thrown into the local swimming pool to swim 20 lanes, up and down, 20 down, every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was not probably Olympic size swimming pool, but it felt Olympic size, okay? Believe me, because I was just 10, so it was big. And it was not that easy, 20 laps. So I did that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 20 laps every day, and at the end I took a medal and went home. And the next year I participated again, 20 laps on Monday, 20 on Tuesday, 20 on Wednesday, and by Thursday I was so tired. I was so tired. And the swimming pool had increased in size. It was 2 times bigger. I kid you not. That's amazing. I don't know how that happened. And I knew by that time that no teacher, nobody was paying any attention to what the kids were doing. As long as they weren't drowning, everything was fine. The teachers were in the cafe basically drinking. Is everyone okay? Right. They probably just read Jack Daniel's running book or something like that. So we had to do our own counting basically as kids. So after 16 laps up and down, I looked around me, nobody was watching. I said, okay, screw everyone, I'm getting out of here because I can't take, I'm drowning basically. So I showered, I dressed, I took a medal and I went home. And I felt so ashamed of myself. I was so ashamed. That medal was burning in my backpack on the way home. And I was so embarrassed. And I didn't tell anyone, didn't tell my parents, didn't tell my friends. And then the next year I participated again. I was 12 years old. I swam 20 laps on Monday, 20 on Tuesday, 20 on Wednesday, and on Thursday I swam 24 laps. I'm serious. 24 laps, so I earned the medal of that year, and also finally I had earned the level of the year before. For me, at least. Felt less guilty, and then I told the story 20 years later or something. So which part of the model is that? Well, I think this is of course about achievement, accomplishment, but it's also a bit about meaning, being your own hero. The narrative you tell yourself, right, is a very positive motivator over here. That's how rewards can sometimes bring out the best in people. Sometimes I hear people be like, oh, you're rewarding extrinsic motivation. Bad, because I just read Drive by Daniel Pink. No extrinsic rewards. No, it is a bit more complicated, a bit more complex than that. This stupid little worthless piece of metal brought out the best in me, I think. It taught me integrity. It made me feel integrity as a person. So where's the adventure in organizational change with gamification? Where's the fun? I often don't see it. I have never seen anyone say, yay, we're doing the Scaled Agile framework. Woohoo, it's so much fun. Never heard it. I've never heard it. So we should have more celebrations. We should have more celebrations for achieving new skill levels. No more frameworks. We have enough frameworks. We need more fireworks in companies. All right, last part. How that change actually happens. As I said, I use it as a metaphor all the time. I started running. Was not that easy, but I tricked myself by giving myself rules all the time. So I have a number of rules. I have to run at least 42 kilometers per week, or about marathon size on average. It is not a marathon, because I usually have 3 runs per week. I have to have at least 24-hour breaks between them, so I have to plan a little bit ahead during the week. So I still have 2 runs to do, and the week ends on Sunday night at 12 o'clock in midnight. So I can do Saturday morning and then Sunday night, for example, because then there's 24 hours between them for the second and the third. I have to finish where I started, so I cannot cheat and take a cable cart up a mountain and only run down, right? Not allowed. I have to complete a circle, and a couple more of those rules. I came up with them myself. I gamify it for myself, basically. And this is what people suggest, the ones who are into habit forming, of how people change their own behaviors. They say this is basically how that works, how we reward ourselves. It starts with the trigger. That's the first part of the habit cycle. You have to trigger, you have to use the environment to manipulate you, basically. There's this famous formula by Kurt Lewin, a sociologist from the 50s last year. Behavior is a function of a person and his or her environment. So you can use the environment to manipulate you consciously. For example, somebody wrote in one of the books, if you want to learn how to play a guitar, place the guitar next to your favorite chair. So when you have a coffee and you sit in your chair, you're like, hey, a guitar. Let's play a little bit. Someone in one of the running books said, place your shoes next to your bed. So when you get up in the morning, ta-da, you're in your shoes. The only thing to do is just get out of the house. So maybe dress first. That would be wise in some countries. So that's how you get started. Use the environment to trigger you at the right moment. And you have to think about how you are triggered, because different people are triggered in different ways. So I tell people in organizations, you have to use the environment to your advantage when you introduce certain ideas. Is it difficult to start doing stand-ups in a certain room? Well, where are people already gathering frequently? Is that in the kitchen? Do your stand-up there for a couple of weeks, because that makes it easy. You have to use the environment as a trigger, and then later you can move it elsewhere when the habit has stuck. The second part of the habit forming cycle is make that habit as small as possible in the beginning. Because as I discovered myself, you don't start with a 7-kilometer run. Right? That's not good even. So someone wrote, your first run should not be more than just a walk around a local park, or something. You don't even have to run, but you do dress in your clothes and your running shoes. So you get yourself into the habit of dressing for running, and then you just do a small jog of 1 kilometer or something. That's fine. Make it as small as possible. So when people have difficulty with retrospectives of an hour or 2 hours, make them 10 minutes. That's okay. It's better than 0. So the first weeks, months will be just 10-minute retrospectives. Just do something. It won't be as effective, but that doesn't matter, because you don't want the effectivity right from the start. You want to evolve that habit, because effectiveness, the marathon will come later. And then it always have to end with a reward. People have to feel rewarded for having done that thing. Even if it was just a 5-minute retrospective, doesn't matter. What is the reward? What do we feel now? The problem is, some things easily lead to convenience and enjoyment. Like I started using Spotify, I started using Uber, and from the first usage, it was already enjoyment. It was already convenient. But what is the enjoyment or convenience of a 3-kilometer run? Nothing. It's just annoying. The enjoyment comes later when you feel great because you did a 15-kilometer run in the morning, but that takes a while for you to get there. So what do you use? Gamification. You're going to trick yourself to keeping up the habit. So in the beginning, I was allowed a chocolate. When I did a 3-kilometer run or 4 kilometers, I was allowed a chocolate because I live in Brussels, so that's how I motivate myself. And I started measuring and extending the streak and things like that. So there's lots of gamification techniques you can use to fake the convenience and enjoyment, basically. And once the habit is there and you start building up the cycle and you increase the size of the action, the runs become longer, the retrospectives become bigger, you will notice the real reward for having done this, which is you feel healthier. And then you can basically skip the chocolates or keep them, that's okay. That's fine. Yeah. So that is what the rewards will do. So where are the many small rewards for making small step progress incrementally in small steps? I don't see it when a framework like SAFE is offered to a company, right? That is what we Agile coaches will have to do. Introduce those ideas in very, very small steps. Make it a habit, not a rule. The rules are what we give ourselves. I have lots of rules for myself when I run. But I decide to, because that's part of my gamification process, the rules that I give. Like friends playing a game and they decide on the rules together because they play a game. Examples, couple of minutes, and then I'll shut up. I asked some people online, do you have examples of gamification? And Mario said, well, for a retrospective meeting, I spin a bottle to define which member of the team is going to participate next. Spinning a bottle to decide who is next. Which part of the model do you think that is? Which part of the framework, the gamification framework? Sorry? Unpredictability, yes, unpredictability, uncertainty. People love things that are unpredictable. The whole gambling industry is focused on this part of the corner. It is negative motivation and it is not rational, right? But it works. It works. If we don't know if something turns red or green, we want to click it and see what happens. It makes no sense. If we already know it will turn green, then there's no incentive to click it because we know what will happen. So what about this? In a project with 3 teams, we had one sprint board with a different card theme for every sprint. Racing cars, superheroes, holiday symbols. Basically every sprint, or with some teams, every release gets a cool name. What part of the model is that, do you think? Just guess. Well, yeah, where do you see that? Ownership, yeah, ownership, yeah, that's one example, but there are more, yeah. Meaning, yeah. I think it's a bit of multiple. My guess was meaning, but I would also guess with ownership, because if you claim the name of the thing you're building, then it is a bit of ownership. But it's also a bit here, empowerment, but it's all positive. It's all positive motivation at the top side of the diagram. The last one that I thought was particularly funny, I have introduced the cake limit in our team. That works as follows. The last column has a limit of 40, the done column, and that means when we've reached 40 items in the done column, the only way to resolve this bottleneck is when the product owner buys us cake. And then we clear up the column. Right? So, which part of the model is that? Accomplishment, yes, and yeah, empowerment, he says. My guess would be different. Yeah, that would be my guess. Accomplishments, celebrating, we did so many things when we finished them. At the same time, social influence. Hey, isn't it time for cake? That's a clearly social thing. But of course, maybe there's also some empowerment. Maybe there's some meaning. I don't know. We could have a discussion about that. So, recap. We all want agility at scale. I notice it everywhere I go, but nobody really knows how change happens. We are domain experts, and I mean Agile coaches, consultants, speakers, writers. We know what Agile is. We know what good techniques are for project management and software development. But how people change behaviors, that's in a completely different domain. That's psychology, that's sociology. We have to learn from the experts in those domains how intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation work in combination with each other. So to deal with changing goals, organizations have to become shapeshifters, sometimes command and control, more often self-organization, but the balance between the two, I think that is what real agility is about. Self-balanced, not self-organized. That means that we have to introduce new ideas all the time. We have to be really good at introducing ideas in the company. From now on, we're going to do things like this. From next month, we're going to do things like that. That would be agile if it is easier to adopt new ideas. Well, that means that we have to get rid of the traditional framework paradigm with a PowerPoint picture, the clay tablets in the 20th century form, with PowerPoint presentation. We have to become much more adaptable in the way we introduce those ideas. Because the ideas are fine, it's just our way of bringing them to people. That is a problem. So no more framework. I don't want to see yet another scaled agile framework or whatever we call them. Let's make them more fun and let's see more fireworks. And that means that we do not offer people rules. They can make rules for themselves. Right? That's part of the gamification. What we need to learn is how do things become a habit. That is the real social challenge in organizations. How do they keep doing what they're doing? And that is often by following a habit cycle. So that is how agility scales in large organizations and small organizations. And for your convenience, I have it all on one slide. In case you forgot everything, just take a picture of this and read it on your on your way home. If you want to know more about this, everything that I'm doing is now focused on gamification, habit forming, and getting rid of frameworks and replacing them with platforms. I suggest that you have a look at this website, agilityscales.com, which is my new project. I thank you so much for being here, for inviting me, bringing me here, Alexander. Appreciate that. And have a great Barcamp. Thank you. Look at how punctual I am. Oh.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jurgen.
Well,
Okay.
my name is removed from the website, but the applause gets longer. I like that.
Actually, do you know where we got the idea from? From the name stuff?
No, tell me.
It's from festivals.
It's from festivals.
So typical in festivals, you have like secret headliners, and that's
okay.
why people are coming.
Okay, so it's not a downward spiral of my career.
No.
It's the next level
it's
up.
Rising.
It's the next level up.
Yes, it is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay, so we're gonna have let's say a 5-minute Q&A session. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask them in English, please. So is there someone with a question?
Be brave.
You've intimidated them.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Thank God. Over there.
And a quick answer, please, because our schedule is quite
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I have to be faster. All right. Okay.
Hi, in Germany, a lot of companies have a great anxiety in introducing gamification. What's like a very short thing, how you would address that in a country where there's also a lot of legislation which is a bit preventing implementing that?
Well, I would see that as a challenge of the game. It is difficult, sure. I'm often with banks, for example. My God, there's so much legislation for banks, as an example. But on the other hand, I'm inspired by agile communities in countries where things are far worse. I've been in Belarus. There's the last dictatorship in Europe, right? White Russia. They have an agile community there. So if they are able to do things in an agile way while living in a dictatorship as a government, then I think we can figure out how to live with the dictatorship of democracies that result in some bureaucratic processes that we have to adhere to. Yeah, it is annoying, but let's see it as a challenge. I cannot tell you how because I don't know the details of the financial industry, etc. But there are people who have it much worse. It's a fascinating problem, thank you.
Any other question?
What I see usually is that people are stuck in their daily routines and they like to change, but they don't have time to change. So they are eager to join any games, they're eager to read about new ideas, but they don't find time to do that. How would you address that?
So when people don't have time, then I wonder about what are the things that were offered as new ideas. If you look at the diagram, the habit changing diagram, it's just tiny habits. And if you start running, many people say, "Oh, I don't have time for running," but everyone has time for a small walk around the house. If everyone has time to get a coffee, if you have time to get a coffee for 10 minutes with colleagues, you have time to come talk about what things could we do better this week while you have that coffee. So you make the habit, the action as small as possible, that it becomes much easier to insert it within the habits that are already in place. And then once you reward it and it becomes a regular habit, then people are going to value what is happening, and then they will figure out how to make other habits smaller to increase the space for that habit that they have just started. Like now I spend 4 or 5 hours per week running. Where did I get that time from? 5 hours per week. I didn't do that 3 years ago, and I thought I had no time for that. Somehow this 5 hours appeared out of nowhere. Apparently, I have stopped doing other things, but I can't pinpoint exactly what. I just increased it, and then something else was decreased subconsciously. Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
I just wanted to ask, do you see an option to support companies to have success with gamification instead of just the cargo culture? Instead of just, we have to motivate our employees so we buy a pool table, but we don't solve the real problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to companies that just tried the cargo cult thing of let's insert a slide and a pool table and some things that makes the organization more fun, but it has no effect whatsoever other than people wasting their time on the pool table because work is not fun.
It's called gamification, but you don't
but
have
that's
a relationship
right.
to work.
Exactly, but that is not gamification. So that is an abuse of terminology. That's like people sitting on chairs and then saying we're doing Scrum while they're not doing anything what is described in the Scrum Guide. So I refuse to call that gamification. But yeah, the term is abused then. And I think that is what smart Agile coaches and consultants are for. to explain, okay, what you're doing could be fun to distract people from the boring job that they have. Which is why the pool table is so popular. I've seen that myself in the past, yes. Now let's talk about how to make that boring job a bit more fun. And apply some of the gamification techniques where in the work itself, which makes it gamification. Otherwise, it is playing a game to be distracted from work. I'm not a coach or consultant myself. I'm just suggesting that this is something you need to focus on in your work, the gamification and habit forming, which is, I think, give crucial pointers. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree. But the funny thing is, the management has another view than the employees. So when I tell them something like that, so it's called like, so we waste our time.
Yeah.
But the kicker table or pool table is not wasting time. So
Yeah. Well, I don't think you need management permission to start gamification tricks in your work. I mean, I count the length of my streaks, or the I don't break the chain, that kind of techniques. Any team can implement them. There's no management permission needed for such things to make things more fun. Reward yourself with chocolates and things like that. Having a cake limit at the end of your task board. I mean, any team can do that. Yeah. All right. Any last questions?
Last question. Nope. Okay, then thank you, Jürgen, for
Thank
coming
you
here.
too. All right. Thank you.
I think Jürgen, you're sticking around a little bit longer until your flight goes, and then maybe people can also talk to you.
I will be here for an hour, and then I will go to the city center. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.